Hello, thank you for clicking on the video, thank you for joining me. So in this video we're going to talk about 10 reasons why I'm choosing to go back to retro games and maybe 10 reasons why you should go back to retro games now in 2024. Now I just want to preface this with saying that I'm not against modern games. I do play modern games. My wife and I have been playing through Hogwarts Legacy, which is an absolute piece of art, that game. Beautiful. I love the castle. I love exploring it. I love how well they brought that world to life. And we're also playing through The Last of Us Part 1 on PlayStation 5, which is, to me, one of the greatest stories ever told on PlayStation, maybe in a video game ever. So while they do have a place in my heart, something about retro games really speaks to me, and I can't understand why. When I say retro, I grew up with the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2, and I couldn't really figure out why games from that era or those eras really got me more excited than games that are coming out now. You can see a trailer for a game coming out tomorrow, and while it looks cool and it's technologically advanced and it's pushing the boundaries and all that, it still doesn't hit the same. So without further ado, this is 10 reasons why I'm going back to retro games. Number 1, unlockables in retro games. Now, like I said, I grew up with the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2. I didn't have an Xbox growing up. I did have a GameCube after quite a while when they went really cheap. Remember those days? But I loved unlockables in games from that time because it was a totally different mindset. Do you guys remember ever playing Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance shortly after it came out and seeing the crypt? What you see on the screen here right now is the crypt. This was the game's unlocking system. Every one of these graves is an unlockable of some sort. It could be concept art or a music track or a whole new character or an outfit or something. It was really cool that they put so much content into that game, and it was all on the disc, and you got it. When you bought it, you got it. I don't think that happens these days. Well, I think there are many games out there that have unlocking structures and maybe some unlockables. I feel like it's dying out. And I see this happening in games like Tekken, for example, where Tekken 3 was where I came into the series, and you had to unlock all the characters, but I'm almost certain that Tekken 7 and Tekken 8, they might have one, maybe two unlockable characters, and then they might have a series of characters you have to buy and download, which I'll get to later. But the unlocking system of retro games, I think it really needs to make a comeback. I don't think it will because the landscape has changed so much. I'm like, do you guys remember WCW wrestling games? If you guys ever played those, they weren't the greatest games, but the unlockables in those games was incredible. I mean, like, they threw in everything, including the kitchen sink. I'm like, they even had developers as playable wrestlers in the game. And if you didn't know who they were, which pretty much everyone didn't know who they were, probably unlocked them and was like, who's this guy? And then they unlocked another one. Who's this guy? It's just some random. For no reason would you want to play as that person, but it was cool. While I don't think you need to go that far, I love the fact that there was just so much unlockable stuff in that game. And it was just sort of surprising, like, wow, where does this end? Do you think we'll ever see these kinds of unlocking systems come back into modern games? Point number 2, gaming gimmicks. What I mean by gaming gimmick is, I think a good example is when the PlayStation 2 was launched and the gaming library had become quite large. There were games that really had a strong identity that nothing else was really comparable to it. For example, Burnout 3 with takedowns and the crash mode, which I'm going to do a video on Burnout 3 and the Burnout series eventually. And other things like, Splinter Cell. It was the stealth game. When GTA Vice City was announced, and we learned that we could fly a helicopter around the city for the first time. That was groundbreaking, and it was the identity, other than the 80s 80s theme, but that sort of individuality is completely dying out. Like a good example now, modern day, is the Far Cry series and the Avatar game made by Ubisoft. It's all the same. Same mechanics, same different engine obviously, but same mechanics, and it plays very similar. The story might change a little bit, but there's a lot of this feeling of copying and pasting. Not necessarily a bad thing, because the Far Cry games are pretty fun, I've got to be honest. But we just don't have games that are like, oh, that's that game that does that thing, and that's its thing. That's not a thing anymore. So anyways, I digress. On to the next point. Actually, before we go on, just really quickly, if you genuinely enjoyed the video, hit the like button please, and if you're interested in the future content of this channel, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to do videos focusing on games, retro games, or games that I grew up with that I've played a lot of, and games I've never played that I've heard a lot of, and games I've never heard of and never played, and do my review on them. So if that interests you, and you're like me, you're kind of into the retro side of things, then please hit the subscribe button. And if you want to know exactly the exact moment you can hear my amazing voice, hit the little bell notification too. Alright, let's get back to it. So point number 3 I want to bring up is gaming peripherals. And the reason why I bring this up, and I think the best way I can put this, is just imagine if Guitar Hero had never been released. No Guitar Hero to this very day. And then tomorrow Guitar Hero is announced. How do you think the audience, the gamers of 2024 would respond to such a thing? Do you feel like that with these days, would it fit in? Or do you think that it might be a little bit of too much of a gimmick? It might be a little bit of a going too far, given that what people are into today. I personally think that a Guitar Hero game released today would probably tank, which sucks because I love Guitar Hero. But as time went on, the Guitar Hero series had waned. They brought out that awful Guitar Hero Live, which had none of the charm and warmth of the original Guitar Hero games, and then it's died out. Another example is Time Crisis, Light Gun games. They died out probably even sooner than Guitar Hero, to be honest. And I'm not making an argument that they need to come back. I think the closest thing we have now is VR. And VR is pretty cool, but even it has its limitations. I think they really have to work on a way to make it feel like you are actually moving, because personally I get nauseated when my mind feels like I'm moving and my body feels like we're not. But the advantage of going back to the retro games is that's when gaming peripherals and that sort of thing was really a hit and really took off, and it was a pioneering thing. So yeah, that's probably not a bad reason to go back and revisit those old Guitar Hero games. By the way, put down in the comments down below what Guitar Hero game is your favourite. Mine is Metallica. Okay, on to point number 4. I was going to talk about gaming mascots, but I think I might even extend that out to gaming exclusives, or exclusives for consoles, because that is something that is also dying out quite rapidly now. So when Xbox came out and PlayStation 2 came out, and Nintendo GameCube was out. Okay, Nintendo, we'll get that out of the way really quick. Nintendo has done for such a long time an amazing job of maintaining and sustaining its exclusive library. And look how well it's paying off, because those games, maybe some games didn't sell as well, but holy moly, if you're trying to collect for the GameCube right now, your wallet is suffering, without a doubt. They maintain their value and they're always sought after. And even the Switch games to this day, current console, you don't see Switch games going down to $5, do you? Unless it's a really bad, like C-grade game. You don't see, games that were really popular on the Switch dropping down to $5. So Nintendo have done a very good job of maintaining their exclusives. Now, Mario has been the face of that brand for so long, and he doesn't seem to be dying out anytime soon. But when it comes to PlayStation and Xbox, wow, what's going on there? The exclusives are just starting to really wane. Now, on the PlayStation, yeah, there's still exclusives, and there's still exclusives on the Xbox, like the Forza series and Halo, and probably Fable when it comes out. But there's just that's 3. If you're curious, just go back and look at how many exclusives have come out for the PlayStation 2 and come out for the original Xbox, and then have a look for the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series consoles, and you will see a massive decline. Now, is this something that maybe should make a comeback? Well, yeah, I think it should, because when Xbox's games are now available on the computer and PlayStation games are now available on the computer, if you have a decent computer, then what's the point of having the PlayStation or the Xbox? Apart from the fact that some of those ports might be bad, possibly could be it. But I really would love for exclusives to come back, and I really would love for mascots to come back. Crash Bandicoot, to me, was really the face of PlayStation. And Crash Bandicoot's relevancy, apart from the Insane trilogy and maybe Crash Bandicoot 4. Crash Bandicoot 4 is okay. He's sort of waned. There's no real sort of mascot for these consoles anymore. And on top of that, the whole kart racing thing. Remember when, if there was a cutesy sort of mascot character for these consoles, without a doubt, they would have some sort of kart racing game. I'm surprised Spyro didn't have a kart racing game, to be honest, but he did get Skylanders. But, those sorts of things, to an extent, platformer games that had unusual cartoonish characters. Okay, it's good to see Ratchet and Clank still going. Rift Apart is amazing. I don't even know if there is a bad Ratchet and Clank game. If there is, let me know in the comments, but I hope I've hammered my point home. Okay, point number 5 is a bit of a weird one. The reason why I say that is games were simple back in the days that I played games when I was a kid. And by simple, I mean much more approachable. I kind of feel like games have become more advanced. Some games that come out these days are, still approachable. But if I haven't played, say, Hogwarts Legacy for a while, it does take me quite a bit of time to get reacquainted with the controllers and the controls. And it takes me a while to sort of figure out what I'm doing and where I'm at. Maybe I'm getting old and maybe I'm having short-term memory loss. It could be that. But it's funny, I could tell you the very point I got to in a game from 20 years ago. And it's almost like riding a bike. It's like the Tony Hawk's games, if you get really good at those, it might take you 5 minutes to readjust, but it's kind of like riding a bike or a skateboard where you just pick up and play. And the approachability is, to me, one of the best selling points, because if you make a game really fun and super approachable for a wide range of people, you're going to sell a lot of that game. I'm not saying games are necessarily going niche right now, but I do find myself a little overwhelmed with what they expect of me. And I just wish we could go back to the days when things were just simple, where arcade races were arcade races, and platforming games just had you jumping around a cartoony stage trying to find hidden things and beat enemies with your moveset. It was just, to me, just right. It was a perfect balance. What do you think? Okay, point number 6, I think, is absolutely going to resonate with a lot of people, and that is the significant decline in couch co-op and couch multiplayer for that matter. I think probably my fondest memories of this sort of thing was me and my best friend playing Halo. We'd probably played through Halo quite a few times now. I think maybe we had played through Halo maybe 2 or 3 times, and that was, couch co-op. And then you've got Time Splitters, heck, 007 GoldenEye on the N64. The N64 was released with 4 controller ports for that exact reason. I know the Borderlands games, they facilitate it. I think Borderlands 3 facilitates up to 4 people on the one screen. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, I think, might do the same thing as well. By the way, Borderlands 2 is probably one of my favourite games of all time. But couch co-op, significantly lower now. It's mainly, what can we do online? How can we get people playing together online? But couch co-op is a completely different thing. While getting online is something you can do after work really quickly before going to bed, couch co-op was an event. Did you ever invite your friends over, get 2 big bags of Doritos, order pizza, heaps of Mountain Dew and Pepsi, and just play games all night? Did you ever do that? I did, and man, that's some good times, and I can't imagine it being the same if they were all at their own house and we were doing this over the internet. Okay, before we get to point number 7, I just want to issue a challenge to everyone. I want to know if you can list every single game that is playing in this video just by seeing it. I've thrown some curly ones in there, some lesser known games, and obviously some very well known games, but see if you can list all of those games in the comment section down below. And who knows, maybe in the future I'll issue another challenge like this that can result in some giveaways. Point number 7, cheat codes. While cheat codes I think are still somewhat present in current modern games, they were such a cool thing to have way back when, 20 years ago. Cheat codes were not necessarily something you did to just cheat and win the game necessarily. You'd unlock them after beating the game, for example, and it was just another way of going through and playing the game and having a totally different experience. Like, you just slogged it out in this first-person shooter, for example, and you'd barely scrape through. You finish the game, and then you've unlocked invincibility, unlimited ammunition, and then you're like, well, great, I'm going to go play through the game, and I'm just going to obliterate everything, and nothing's going to stand in my way. And it changes the game for you. You're no longer being tactful. You're killing machine. I think back to the days of Driver on the PS1. Now, Driver on the PS1 has a very close personal connection to me, and that's something I'll touch on in another video. Maybe some gaming stories I'll talk about in a video. But the cheats for that game I think were great. There was stilts. You could put your car on stilts, so you'd have your wheels really low. Well, they're touching the ground, so they're always really low. But then the car body was way up in the air, and it had this massive travel for the suspension. So when you hit a bridge or a jump, the car would just go flying through the air for miles. Such great fun. Those cheat codes, that sort of game-changing stuff, I think that's severely dying. Okay, point number 8 is a pretty big driver in why I've gone back to playing retro games and playing, at this stage, PS2 games. And that is seasons, pre-order bonuses, DLC packs. Destiny comes to mind when it comes to seasons and things like that. If you don't play Destiny for, say you take a 12-month break, because there's many games out there, and you come back to it, holy moly, you come back to a completely different game. And is that a good thing? Yeah, maybe, possibly. This game's of a service idea. It's pretty annoying, I've got to be honest. In Mortal Kombat Armageddon, they just packed that game with so much content, and it was all on the disc, and anything that was inaccessible, you just unlocked it by playing the game. if they're still doing that, great. But the fact that there's now, if you want to get this outfit or this fighter, then download this fighter pack. I just don't like that. I don't like the feeling of being behind either. Especially when, if you play a game with friends and you decide to go play a game that you'd rather spend your time on, you come back, your friends are, like I said, it's a completely different game, like a completely different armor or completely different gear. And you're like, oh great, now I feel like the third wheel or the sixth wheel. And I got to try and get all this gear and catch up and figure out what's going on. Now, for most people, that's probably okay. For me, married father of 2, works full time, I don't have the time for that. I commit my time to a game that came out in 2004, it's not going to change. And if it was 2004 right now, it's still not going to change. Okay, I know point 9 is going to resonate with every single person. So I'm just going to talk about a scenario here and sound off in the comments if this hits home for you. So you're back in your days of being a kid, back when Blockbuster was a thing. Out here in Australia, we had Video Easy, but I think we did have Blockbuster here as well. And it's weekend, you go out to get some movies, you go check out the video game section. There's a video game there that's just come out and they've got it and it's in stock and you can hire it for the night. And you're like, I don't care what happens, I'm going to play the heck out of that game while I've got it. So you hire it out, you pay like $6, or it might have been $10, who cares? It's barely anything. You take the game home, you put it into your console, you turn it on, and you play it immediately. Modern day games, every single game that comes out, every single one that I've bought has a day one update. A day one update. It drives me insane. You paid good hard-earned money for this disc and you don't have the game on the disc. You've got like a semi-constructed version of it and you've got to get the rest of it with this update, or they've released it with all these problems, but like, we'll fix it later. If I've got a game that I've really enjoyed and I don't have it, and I say to my wife, I really want you to experience this game with me, I love it, let's go get it. And we get it, we take it home, it's after work, baby girl, our daughter, is finally in bed asleep, and we put the disc in and there's like 2 hours of update, and our internet's really slow, so it goes even longer than that. It usually reaches the point where it's like, oh well, we'll start the update download process and we'll watch Netflix, because let's face it, we're not going to be up at midnight to try the game. We'll wait till tomorrow night. And it's completely changed the experience for me, and it's a massive turn off. Now, there are advantages to that, because there are buggy, problematic games that were released back before they could fix this sort of thing that they can now fix, which is great. But it really, to me, should be sometimes you buy a game and there's a day one update. Sometimes. Most of the time, because manufacturers or game developers finish the game, they want to release a perfect, as close to perfect, ready to go product they can. You get the game and it's quite a while before they actually release a patch to fix something. Okay, thank you very much for sticking with me this far in. We're up to point number 10, emulation. I've been dabbing in emulation for the last few years now, and I've only seen it get better and better and better. Everything you're seeing on the screen, that's PS2 games rendered at 4K. While emulation isn't perfect, it's the perfect bridge between the games I want to play and them being too ugly for me to play them. I've got everything that you see on the screen here rendering out at 4K. I can't honestly sit down and plug a PlayStation 2 into an OLED and play that. It's honestly, if the police want to get information out of a criminal, a potential murderer, about the location of some bodies, just set them up with a PlayStation 2 on a 75-inch OLED, and they'll start spilling the beans pretty quickly, because that's painful. That is very painful to look at. So emulation fixes that problem. It's the only gripe I have with playing games from 2000s and the PlayStation 3, 2007, 2006. But by bringing it in, emulating it at a high resolution, it's so clean, it's so crisp, and the frame rate's good. But like I said, emulation isn't perfect. Most PS2, GameCube, Wii games are supported. Xbox games, I haven't gone there because I know it's quite difficult to emulate them. And the PlayStation 3, there's a relatively large selection of games that work pretty well. But at this stage, the PS3 hooked up to a high-definition TV is good enough. Sharp visuals, retro games, and that everything that I just listed in this video just together. It makes me a very happy man. Very happy. Although I could go cheesecake. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you taking the time to check this out, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.